Hey everybody, this video is on proportions. Proportions are basically, they're an equation, but it's a special kind of equation. It's an equation with two or more equivalent ratios. In other words, there will be an equal sign and there is one, at least two, possibly three or four or more ratios, but usually just two ratios that are entirely equivalent. So a quick example of this would be if you had a ratio of 2 to 3, and it were equal to another ratio of 4 to 6. Hopefully you recognize that those two would be equal. There's something that you need to notice always when you have equal ratios or equal fractions. It's that the cross products 2 times 6 and 3 times 4 always wind up being equal. 2 times 6, 12. 3 times 4, also 12. So if these really are a proportion, in other words, if they're truly two fractions, say a over b and c over d, if they are really and truly a proportion and these are equal ratios, then a times d will also equal b times c. So let's take a quick break. Why don't you write down a fraction, common fraction, and then write down another common fraction that you know is equal to it. So pause the recording, write them down. Okay, so you might have done something like this down here. 10 over 12 is the same as 20 over 24. You might have done something more simple. But right now, please write out entirely the cross products. What is this cross product and this cross product? I'm going to write 10 times 24. Okay, you go ahead and do yours. Okay, so hopefully what you noticed when you did that is that the one cross product, in my case 10 times 24 equals 240, and then 12 times 20 also equals 240. Therefore I know that these are in fact equal ratios. Okay, so one of the very most important pieces of this is to determine if something truly is proportional. You can test them by doing just what we had done in the prior section, where you take the cross products and you check to see, are they equal? So the question here for you is, are these equal? So go ahead and do the math on both of these and prove whether or not this one is equal and whether or not this one is equal. Okay, pause the recording, go ahead. Okay, so hopefully you were able to work that out. Here's how it looks. Basically 21 times 112.5 right there winds up being 2,362.5. Then the other cross product, 15 times 157, that also is 2362. So it's true, these are a proportion and these two ratios are equal. However, it was close on this one, but it wasn't quite right. 46 times 7.5 is 345. 11.5 times 31 wound up being 356. These are very close to equal, but they are not equal because the cross products are not equal. So one of the quick ways that students in middle school often like to think about this is what they call the fish. Now, you will never hear the word fish on the SATs. You probably won't hear it in high school, but for some reason, middle school kids seem to really groove on this idea of the fish. Here's the fish. The fish simply says that if you have a true proportion, then you know that 3 times 15 is going to equal whatever 5 times 9 is equal to. So this product, 3 times 15 divided by 5 equals 9, or 3 times 15 divided by 9 equals 5, or 5 times 9 divided by 3 is 15, 5 times 9 divided by 15 is 3, and so forth and so on. We'll get to the fish in a second here, but you can see this 3 times 15 divided by 5, 3 times 15 divided by 5 gives you 9. 3 times 15 divided by 9 gives you 5. 9 times 5, 9 times 5, 9 times 5 divided by 3 gives you 15. And lastly, 9 times 5 divided by 15 gives you 3. So this sort of looks like a fish, if you have a little imagination. If you start going, say, 9 times 5 is 45. 45 divided by 3 is 15. And there's your little fish right there. Okay, so that's how that works. this cross product divided by this factor equals that factor, and that's where you get your little fish. Okay, so for a little practice on this, I'll do this first one here. I'll show you two different ways you can do it. This one says 7 is to x as 8 is to 15. First way I'll say is 7 times 15 equals 8 times x. Okay, so then 105 is going to equal 8x. Now to get to x is being multiplied by 8, so I will divide by 8. And my answer, x equals 13.125, which many of you will recognize as 13 1/8 from earlier in the year. Now, if I had not done it that way, I simply could have said, using the fish, 7 times 15 divided by 8. And that will also give me 13 1/8. Okay, so go ahead, do A, B, and C, and we'll check your results in a second. Okay, so hopefully you worked through that all right. The first one, you can just do the fish here. 5 times 7 is 35. 35 divided by 10 is 3.5. It would also be fine to write it as 35 tenths. This next one is 7 times 14, 98, divided by 10 equals B. 98 divided by 10 is simply 9.8, because just move the decimal over. Last one, 20 times 20 equals 15 times D, so 20 times 20 divided by 15 gives you D, so 20 times 20 is 400, divided by 15 comes out to 26.6 repeated, also known as 26 2/3. Okay, so this one, of course, I have to introduce this because this is the limit of the fish. The fish doesn't work so well in this case because it's a little more complicated problem, and you need to make sure you understand the cross product idea that we've covered before. So we're going to walk you through this, and we'll give you one example or two that you can work on yourself. So again, we have a proportion. This is equal to this. These ratios are exactly the same. Therefore, we know that this cross product, 6 times 15, is the same as 5 times x minus 2. So we can simply work this out, not by using the fish. I guess you could say 6 times 15. Get your answer there. What's that? 90. 90 divided by 5. And 90 divided by 5, the result of that would equal x minus 2. That's one way to do it. Or probably a little bit more appropriately, you would say 6 times 15 equals 5 times x minus 2. And then, of course, you'd recall distributive property. Remember that? Everything in here has to get 5 times bigger. So to complete that, 6 times 50 is 60, plus 30 is 90. 5 times x is 5x. 5 times negative 2 is minus 10, or negative 10. And then you look at that equation, you say, well, I've got numbers here, and I got numbers here, and I got x's here, so I want to get these x's alone. So I'm going to choose to get rid of this 10, negative 10, so I'm adding 10 to that. And 90 plus 10 gives me 100. 100 equals 5x. And x is being multiplied by 5, so we divide by 5. Divide by 5. 100 divided by 5 is 20. Turns out that that is what x is worth. X equals 20. There was a lot of steps there. There were a lot of places where you could get stuff wrong. There's one spot. This is a mistake you could have. You could divide wrong here. You could multiply this wrong. So you should always check this. Check 20. And you should check it in the original spot. Here's 20. So on your calculator, I'm going to ask you to check this right now. Do 20 minus 2, 18 divided by 15. 6 divided by 5 is 1 1/5, so that's 1.2. So you want to check to see that 18 divided by 15 is equal to 1.2. Go ahead. Okay, so hopefully that worked out for you and you understood that it was in fact 1.2. It would probably, as I paused there, I thought it probably would be better to actually make sure you wrote the whole thing out. So you probably should just say 20 minus 2 over 15, 18 over 15. And actually you could just reduce it right there, because 3 goes into this 6 times, 3 goes into that 5 times. And lo and behold, look at that, 6/5. It is going to check because that's the exact same ratio. Okay, so lastly, here's your challenges to see if you really got this material. These last two are the toughies. You got to do exactly what we did a few minutes ago, and these ones are more like the beginning. This one's more like the beginning. Go ahead and see if you can get all three of them, and then we'll wrap it up. Okay, so those are challenging. I hope you're able to roll through them. In the first one, 12 times x minus 5 has to equal 7 times 5. I went ahead and changed that into 35. So 12 times x, 12x, 12 times negative 5, negative 60. That's important. That's a minus 60. Take away positive 60 or adding a negative 60. And to get rid of that, you want your x's here, and you got numbers and numbers. So you're going to get rid of this, get it away from these x's. You can't divide until the end. So this is minus 60. So you will add 60 to both sides. You get 95. 12x equals 95. Now you can divide. X is multiplied by 12, so you divide by 12, divide by 12. And in the end, x is about 7.916 repeated. Okay, this one was a little more straightforward. It had a messy answer. 7 times b has to equal 6 times 13.2. So 6 times 13.2 is 79.2. 7b is 79.2. So b is multiplied by 7. You divide by 7. Or simply following the fish, 6 times 13.2 divided by 7 equals b. That comes out to around 11.3. Okay, and for the last toughie, 10 times 2x plus 5 has to equal 3 times 7. So you write that out. 10 times 2x plus 5. 10 times 2x plus 5 right here equals 3 times 7. There's 3 times 7. 3 times 7 is 21. 10 times 2x, 20x. 10 times 5, 50. This is 50 is being added. Here's your x's. These are numbers and numbers. You want to get the numbers all over on one side. This is adding 50, so you subtract 50 from both sides of the equation to keep it equal. 20x then is negative 29. And you divide. X is being multiplied by 20, so you divide by 20. And x is negative 29 over 20, also known as should be negative 1.45. Now we went through all that fairly fast, and if you are not crystal clear, it would do you a great bit of good to go back and run through these again. The great thing about these is you can just make up random ones and solve them, and they will work. If you do it right, your answer is always checkable. So you can just make up anything. Might look like what we just did here. Might be x minus 5. But the value that you get for x, in this case the negative 1.45, if you substitute back in there, the value of this division right here must equal the value of this division right here. So when we put negative 1.45 up in here, that should equal 7/10.